People don't know how hard we toil at this, our craft. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Book Report presented by the Millions. My name is Mike.
My name is Janet.
And this week we're going to be talking about books that disappointed us by authors we love. It can be a really sort of weird, distancing experience, and so we're going to be talking about that.
As is not a secret to anybody, David Mitchell is one of my favorite authors. So I read Cloud Atlas and then Ghostwritten. And maybe I had already read Number 9 Dream, but I was just like in love with him. And then the next book that came out of his was Black Swan Green. And to give you an idea, this is my copy of Black Swan Green.
Wow.
This is how early I got it. It doesn't even have a cover. It has like a memo on the front. So I got this. I felt like the Prince of Arabia. And then I read it and it like left me very neutral.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is true of you. Like, if I'm reading a book that I really expected to like and it's disappointing me, I kind of go into denial about it.
That is exactly like the first thing I was going to say. Like, denial is absolutely my first reaction when I'm reading a book by an author I like that I know. I just keep thinking, well, it could pick up, or I just lie to myself and it's not the same, but it's good. It's still good. It's different, but it's good. And it's a while before I can admit to myself, like, okay, this was actually not his best work or her best work. It's the first stage of grief, both personal and literary.
Yeah, because then you start bargaining, and you're like, if I just finish it, it will all make sense.
It'll pay off at the end, yeah. It would take me years sometimes before I could admit that I didn't like a book. Like, when I was in college, one of my favorite authors was John Updike. I had just kind of gotten into him in high school, and I read all the Rabbit books. And then I read a novel of his called Roger's Version, and then one called The Witches of Eastwick, and I didn't like either one of them. But for a long time, I was convinced. I was kind of like, it's probably just me. I just need to reread these, But in a way, it's almost a relief to me sometimes when I read a book that I don't like by an author that I like, because it's like, okay, you're human too. Like, you can make mistakes, or you can write things that I personally don't like, which maybe isn't a mistake per se, obviously. But
actually, I had a similar experience when I read Radio On by Sarah Vowell, which is her first book. It was a collection of essays which she wrote when she was like 28 or something.
Wow.
Or it might have been published a little bit later, but a lot of the essays were from like earlier publications. And it's not good.
Yeah.
And so I didn't enjoy reading it, but I was kind of like, oh, like she hasn't always been Sarah Vowell.
Yeah.
She got better. And it gave me actually a lot of hope, because I was about that age at the time. And I was like, I don't have to be great yet.
Yes. And
there's
that's
still
such
room
a
for me
great
to
thing to
become
learn.
Sarah Vowell.
So, yeah.
But I think I would have by now, actually.
I also had a similar experience with one of my favorite authors is Philip Roth, and I got into him right after college, and I got into him by reading a lot of his newer books, like American Pastoral and I Married a Communist, and then I read Portnoy's Complaint, which it's a book I have such mixed feelings about. I've gone from hating it when I read it to liking it again, and back to hating it, because it's I think everybody pretty much knows the plot. It's just, such as it is, it's about a young man who's obsessed with sex and masturbates a lot. And so that's pretty much the entirety of the plot. And until you get to the very last line of the book, or when you get to the very last line of the book, you realize it's almost like a long, shaggy dog tale, and it has a punchline. And the punchline is hilarious. And so I think it's a great joke, but I'm just not sure if it's a great book,
A few years ago, I was at a writing conference, which are uniformly great. And I saw Jonathan Safran Foer speaking of a divisive man, and he said, like the ending of a book is when you realize whether the book you've been reading is the book the author thought they were writing, where like the author's intention and your experience like resolve or not. But I think that's part of it, especially not liking books by your favorite authors, is you think you know what they're going to give you. If that's not what they're giving you, you're like, what?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's not necessarily the book's fault or the author's fault. It's that with beloved authors, you have sort of even a narrower expectation.
For me, there's a tendency to think of your favorite writers in a weird way as your friends.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense, but
Yeah.
I think it's just something that kind of happens because they're like, this person really understands me, and it's
Yeah.
I guess part of being a fan is that sort of, I don't know, presumed friendship that's not real, but that it just sort of feels like it somehow. It's hard out there for a book critic and a book critic. Two book critics, one might say. Well, we hope that this is not an episode you hate by co-hosts you love, me and Janet. This has been the Book Report, presented by the Millions. You'll never walk alone, Janet.
Never walk alone, Mike.